your man, Louie Tee. Welcome to the 2018 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series where your man, Louie Tee, aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2018 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we get a score for each and every single player selected in X said team's draft. Apply bonuses when necessary. Divide the number of picks. And voila, we'll come up with an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right. You, the viewer, are in total control as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Bucks, next, Tampa, next, TB. You get where I'm going with this. Speaking of which, the next team up in the series is none other than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is a franchise right now that's sort of in a weird position. Right now, I believe that their coach and potentially their general manager are both on the hot seat. Now, definitely the coach for sure, but I think the two come as a package deal right now. And so I feel like a lot of the moves made this offseason is to try to save their jobs. You go out, you get JPP, and Jameis Winston's situation is a little touchy-feely. We've heard some rumblings coming out of the Buccaneers camp that, hey, nothing's etched in stone as far as him starting. That's a bunch of bull. We all know that when Jameis Winston comes off of that suspension, he's going to be inserted into the lineup. I don't care if the Buccaneers are 3-0 and they've been decisive in all three of those victories. Jameis Winston is going to be the starter in Tampa Bay. That being said, this is a big season for Jason Light and company if they're going to not only be competitive in what might be the best division in all of football, but more importantly, if they're going to keep their jobs and remain in Tampa Bay. Dirk Cutter and Jason Light have a lot of work to do. And I think what they've done this offseason is they've made a conscious and concerted effort to just get tougher, more physical, more stouter at the point of attack, and just be a more physical football team overall. I think the message that they're trying to send is that, look, we may not be the most talented, and they're not going to admit that, obviously, but they're saying to themselves, we're not going to lose because another team comes into our building, into Raymond James Stadium, and punks us. Okay, if we lose football games, it's because we just weren't good enough, but it won't be because we weren't tough enough. This Buccaneers team, if you look at the moves made in the offseason and you look at this draft and you look at what they've done over the last 2 years in the draft under Jason Light, I think this is a team that has gotten exponentially tougher. It's going to be a lot harder to run the football against this Buccaneers team. It's going to be a lot harder to get yards after the catch. They're going to be a physical group. They're going to flow to the football, and they're going to be physical when they get there. And I think that's going to be their calling card. They may win games 19-16. And maybe back to the days of Bucs ball under John Gruden, where you knew it wasn't going to be a bunch of points being scored. And the first team to 13, and most times it was the Bucs, they're going to win the game. That's where this team may be, even though they feel like they have some explosiveness on the offensive side of the football, and some of the players that they added in this draft may add to that. Bottom line is the defense has to be better, and I think they've done that. They've gotten stouter, more physical on the defensive side of the football, and this draft is a huge part of the reason why. Let's jump into this draft as we start in the first round. 12th overall selection, defensive lineman out of Washington, Vita Vea is the selection to get this Buccaneers draft started off. So when you talk about being more physical, being more stout at the point of attack, being a much tougher, more physical football team, this is the exact guy that you're talking about, and this is the kind of guy that will set that type of tone for your football team. And to me, this wasn't a pick that had to be made. There were other players on the board that may have addressed needs greater than the defensive line, specifically the defensive tackle position in Tampa Bay. But this goes back to my original point, and I'm going to continue to hark on this all breakdown long, all draft wrap-up series for the Bucs long, is that this is a sign that I think they want to be tougher. They want to be a much more physical football team at all levels, especially on the defensive line, offensive line. And in their secondary. I think they like their linebackers. I think they love what they have there if guys can just stay healthy. But they want to be more physical up front, and a guy like Vita Vea is exactly what you're looking for. You add Mitch Unrein, you add Bo Allen in the offseason. These are guys that aren't going to wow you with athleticism, but are going to be very stout at the point of attack, eat up space, eat up blockers, allow your fast and physical linebackers to flow to the football. Here's another guy that's going to allow you to do that as well. And unlike Mitch Unrein, unlike Bo Allen, this guy can make plays on his own. As you look at Vita Vea, 6'4", 347 pounds. I actually had done this breakdown, and I never released the video. I ran out of time before the draft, and I never doubled back to release the video. So some of this stuff, I had to go back and refresh a little bit because I had watched all the film because a lot of Redskins fans wanted Vita Vea, and it's amazing how the Buccaneers snatched him right off the board right before the Redskins were up to select. And so a lot of Redskins fans were upset because this was the guy that they coveted in the Redskins draft. And it would have been interesting to see what the Redskins would have done, because the word out of Washington was that Daron Payne was the guy the entire time. It would have been fun and very intriguing to see both Daron Payne and Vita Vea on the board at the same time. That being said, here's a guy that was dominant throughout his career. 5'1", 40 for Vita Vea. 41 reps of 2 1/4. Obviously, the guy is a monster. 15 tackles for loss throughout his career. 9.5 career sacks. 2 forced fumbles. This is a guy that did some of everything. But the thing that was the most impressive was this guy's ability to eat up double and triple teams and still be effective. And you watch him on tape, and I always tell you, when a guy is dominant in a game, if you're looking to see the best of a player, go to fill-in-the-blank game. And for Vita Vea, it's not even close for me. The 2017 Washington State game is Vita Vea at his best. If you want to see this guy dominate the line of scrimmage, you want to see this guy wreak havoc on the opposition and just be disruptive up front, the Washington State game is as good as you're going to get out of Vita Vea. And if you can get that kind of performance from him, not every single week, but throughout the course of the season, 2 or 3 or 4 times in any given season, you're going to have yourself an absolute stud here in Vita Vea, which no one is disputing right now. I think he was another one of those guys that you felt like one of the safer picks in this draft because of what he brings to the table. Guy's an athletic freak. Guy's a physical football player. Guy works his ass off, and the guy is just a good football player. So measurables are ridiculous at 6'4", 347, and he carries the weight like he's 6'4", 300. You can't even tell the extra 50 pounds, and when you look at him, he doesn't look like a fat guy. You know how when a guy's 330, 335, normally he's sloppy, it's not good weight. You can see it. He looks big. This guy looks like he's 6'4", 300 pounds. He's lean. The way he's constructed makes for a guy that is going to have a nice, long NFL career dominating in the trenches. A lot of people liken him to Haloti Ngata, and I love the comparison because he's got that kind of quickness, that kind of physicality, and that kind of movement skills to be able to be dominant up front for a number of years to come. Athleticism, I told you 5'1", for a guy that's 350 pounds essentially is insane. Hand usage, he's got that Reggie White club hump move where when you're that strong, and Reggie White was a strong man, he would just take and he would pitch a guy, literally get up under their arm and just move them out of the way with a forearm essentially. And Vita Vea has that same club hump move where he can just throw a guy out of the way with just brute force. And so that's something that he wins with, on top of the fact that he can also win with quickness off the snap. So, and obviously he can collapse the pocket. So he's got a number of ways to be disruptive up front, not just the club / hump move, but also bull rush and quickness. Awareness, there's a screenplay versus UCLA where he understands, like, I'm being double teamed all game long. All of a sudden now I'm just getting into the backfield scot-free. Something's not right here. He sniffs out screen and makes the play. And so it's those types of plays that you really get excited about. When you see a big guy understanding what's going on and not willy-nilly rushing after the quarterback because he's finally getting a shot to get a hit on the quarterback. No, I'm looking to make a play. I'm looking to be sound in my principles, and that's what you get out of Vita Vea as well. Point of attack, physicality, as I mentioned, 41 reps of 2 1/4. This guy stands up to double teams like it's nothing, like he's being single blocked, and at times will defeat double team blocks. I've seen this guy triple teamed and still hold his ground. So this is a guy that at the point of attack, you're not going to move him, which is music to Bucs fans' ears everywhere, because at times the Bucs on the ground, in terms of their rush defense, they were grotesque. So to be able to just be able to know you're going to stop the run if this guy's in the lineup is definitely something that should make all Buccaneers fans smile for sure. Redirect for a guy his size is phenomenal. Ability versus the run, as I told you, that's his specialty right now. He may grow into a guy that could get you 5 to 7 sacks in any given year. Right now, that's not who he is. He's more of a 2 or 3 sack guy, but he's dominant in the run game. So right now, for me, he's dominant in the run game, and his pass rushing ability is not to be slept on, okay? 9.5 career sacks, and if I'm not mistaken, about 5 or 6 of them came, 4 to 6 of them came in 2017. So he's a guy that I think is starting to have the light bulb come on for him as far as pass rushing is concerned, and he'll only get better at that at the next level. Tackling ability, he's a phenomenal tackler, one of those guys that once he gets his hands on you, generally you're going down onto the turf. So I love his ability to get into plays and have his presence felt as a tackler. Motor, I put down in my notes, versus Washington State, the game that I referenced at the top of his breakdown as the one that you want to go watch when referring to Vita Vea. He makes a tackle on the running back 25 yards down the field. That's the kind of motor that this guy has. I watched him on special teams versus Penn State in the bowl game, his final collegiate game, run all the way down the field and make a tackle on special teams like he was a 250-pound linebacker. I mean, the guy athletically and motorized is just ridiculous. So love what he brings to the table from a motor and endurance standpoint, and impact on the game. Again, when you're looking at guys in the trenches, you can't always determine what their impact is by just looking at the stats and looking at what they were able to do from a stat sheet perspective. You've got to watch the game to analyze what a guy's impact truly is. And for Haloti Ngata, a guy who we're trying to compare Vita Vea to, and you're hoping, if you're a Buccaneers fan, that he ends up comparing to in the long haul, his impact on the game wasn't always measured by tackles for loss or sacks or batted balls. It was also measured by Ray Lewis being able to run free and make plays, okay? Ray Lewis would be the first to tell you, without the guys up front keeping him clean, he was useless, okay? Ray Lewis, for as good as he is, and ask any inside linebacker in the league, I don't care how good you are, how fast you are, how dynamic you are, if your guys up front aren't occupying blockers and allowing you to roam free and make tackles, then you're not going to be the best player that you could possibly be as an inside linebacker. So Vita Vea's importance, I watched him against UCLA get triple teamed. Somebody's got to make a play if a guy's occupying 3 blockers up front. Somebody's got to do something. You're going to have some guys singled up along the line of scrimmage. They've got to win one-on-one matchups. You've got linebackers that will be unaccounted for because guys are focusing in on the massive man that is Vita Vea. Somebody's got to get free and make a play. And so when you've got a guy occupying space and blockers like that, the impact felt is almost unmeasurable. So, or is it immeasurable? Either way, Vita Vea is a big-time get for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And like I said, this is the first pick in a number of picks in this particular draft that screamed to me, we want to be more physical. We want to be tougher. We weren't tough enough last year. We want to be much more physical, and Vita Vea screams much more physical. In the first round, 12th overall selection, defensive lineman out of Washington, Vita Vea for me, obviously, is.
Hits it high! Hits it deep! It is out of here!
So for those of you keeping track at home, if you don't know, I don't know how you don't, Vita Vea was a home run as we move to the second round, 38th overall selection. A running back out of USC, Ronald Jones II is the selection. So I'm not going to break down Ronald Jones II. Rojo is a guy that I looked at during the draft wrap-up, or excuse me, Draft Prospects 101 series pre-draft. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Rojo and some of the other guys that I was able to get to prior to the draft, and there's another guy in this draft class that I was able to get to prior to the draft, go to the Louie Tee Network on YouTube, find the playlist section, and click on the 2018 Draft Prospects 101 series. There you'll find an extensive breakdown of Ronald Jones II and what he brings to the table. He's a dynamic football player, a guy that I gained more respect for as I watched the tape. I watched countless USC games. We get a ton of Pac-12 after dark around these parts. Saw a ton of USC, and I wasn't that amazed at what I saw with Ronald Jones II. I knew that the guy had straight line speed. What I didn't account for was his ability to make people miss out in space. I think I undersold him, and even in the breakdown, I may have undersold him a bit in his ability to make guys miss. But one thing you cannot question is this guy's ability to hit the home run, something that the Buccaneers have lacked from the running back position for quite some time now. You look at some of the backs that they had. Look, Doug Martin is nice and he was cute, but Doug Martin was nobody's home run hitter. He would hit the occasional home run, all right, but he was more of a doubles, singles, and the occasional triple guy. This is a guy that is a legit threat each time he touches the football to take it the distance. And there's nothing better than a guy that you hand it off to, and 64 yards later, he's in the end zone, and you've got a two-play, 70-yard drive that culminated in a 64-yard touchdown run. Those are sweet. And very infrequent in Tampa Bay on the ground of late. So this guy's going to change the game on the ground for the Buccaneers. And so this is a big-time get for them. They needed to upgrade the running back position. They've moved on from Doug Martin. They've got some guys that can do some things in that backfield, but none of them bring to the table what Ronald Jones II brings to the table. And so in the second round, 38th overall selection, running back out of USC, Ronald Jones II, for me, is so we stay in the second round, 53rd overall selection, defensive back out of North Carolina, M.J. Stewart is the pick. And for those of you scoring at home, Ronald Jones II was a triple. So I'm not going to lie to you, when I was watching the draft, and obviously if you've been a subscriber of the Louie Tee Network and you joined me for the draft, and you know I was live for the first 2 days of the draft, and on day 2, as the Bucs made the selection of M.J. Stewart, I was surprised. I had no idea who M.J. Stewart was. Had a lot of homework to do on him because I wasn't privy to who this guy was prior to the Bucs making the selection. So I went into this process with no preconceived notions of what this guy was supposed to be able to bring to the table and who he was. But obviously the Bucs thought high enough of him to pull the trigger on him in the second round before another guy that they would ultimately select in the second round as well. So they must have really seen some things that they liked in M.J. Stewart. And I'm here to tell you, I saw some of the same things. And this is continuing the trend of being tougher as a football team. And so the Bucs, look, we talked about the Buccaneers cornerback situation all last year and how Brent Grimes can't be your best cornerback. Yet that's the case. Brent Grimes has been your best cornerback for the last 2 years. And Brent Grimes is 897 years old. And so the fact that Vernon Hargreaves III hasn't panned out the way that you had hoped thus far, don't give up on the young man, okay? Still got time to turn it on and turn it up, and you're hoping that this is the year that it all culminates in him finally having the light bulb come on and him playing exceptional football. But he needs help, and it's time for other guys to get an opportunity to push him, and if he's not doing his job, then other guys need to get in there and get an opportunity to see if they can't help this Buccaneers defense out. And so entering a guy like MJ Stewart, 5'11", 200 pounds, 4'5", 40, 18 reps of 2 1/4, 35-inch vert, left North Carolina as the school's all-time leader in PBUs. So he's around the football. He's getting his hands on the football. Career stats, 6 INTs, 41 pass breakups. Woo! Man's getting his hands on the football. 3 sacks, 11.5 tackles for loss. That's a lot for a corner, mind you. And 3 forced fumbles. So, and don't forget, the guy was also a punt returner in 2017. And so he's a guy that can offer you a little bit of versatility in that department as well. So the 4.5, 4.40 doesn't necessarily jump out at you, but neither will the speed of your next corner that you took. But that's not what the Buccaneers are focused on right now. Like I said, they're looking to get tougher. They're looking to get, let's get physical. They're looking to get much more physical as a football team as a whole. And that goes for the secondary as well. And so a guy like MJ Stewart, I talked about this with the Patriots and Duke Dawson. I love corners that approach the position like safeties. Nothing gets me more excited than a corner that will guard a guy and run with him all over the field, but in the same breath will go up and stick his nose in the run game as a supporter in the run game, as if he's a safety, as if he belongs. Not looking to just be a guy that comes to the party, but he's looking to get into the party first. I talked about this with Duke Dawson and how he's not looking to stand in line and wait to see if he can get into the club. He's looking to skip the line, talk to the bouncer, and he's looking to get in. All right, he wants to be up front and center when that ball carrier bounces it outside to his side of the football field. He's looking to do damage, and that's MJ Stewart, man. Never turning down a challenge to go blow somebody up in the run game, and very physical when it comes to him in coverage. Measurables, at 5'11", 200 pounds, not going to scare anybody with his measurables, but that's nor here nor there, okay? I think 5'11" is perfectly fine in this league, even though the receivers are getting bigger, and so are the corners in this league. 5'11" is still an acceptable size for a cornerback to play out wide. Speed. The 4.54 isn't great, okay, by any stretch of the imagination, but when you play the position the way that MJ Stewart does, with the ability to be physical, to hinder a guy's fluidity, then that 4.54 is something that you can live with, and it's just fine. Athleticism and acceleration are both things that he uses to make plays on the football. Agility and change of direction. Again, these are all things that help this guy excel at the cornerback position. Anticipation and awareness. I want to lump this in with the next pro. Look, locate, and contest. You know I'm an LLCer type of guy. And for those of you who don't know what being an LLCer is, it just simply means a guy that looks, locates, and contests. If you don't look back for the football, then you can't locate it. If you don't locate the football, then you can't contest it, okay? Or you can, you're not going to pick off many passes. And so this is a guy here. I link his anticipation and awareness to his ability to look, locate, and contest. I put down in my notes, watching him, I get excited when I watch guys like this because one of two things is going to take place. Either he's going to make a play or he's going to pick up a penalty. But generally, guys aren't going to make a bunch of catches on players like MJ Stewart unless there's some kind of breakdown, especially underneath. If you beat him deep, you beat him off the line of scrimmage and you've got legit speed and he can't make up the ground and it's a great throw that leads the receiver and allows him to run under the football, you might get MJ Stewart in some man-to-man situations. But if you're talking about underneath coverage, MJ Stewart's going to be somewhere in the picture, either looking to break it up, looking to hit you upon contact, point of catch, or as soon as you catch the football, he's going to be right in pursuit to get you down on the ground. In any event, I said in my notes, a mugging will take place when this guy's in coverage. So for you ladies out there, clutch your purse. For you guys out there, head on a swivel, okay? Because somebody's about to get mugged, all right? And this guy is always using his hands, grabbing, tugging, pulling, hugging, rubbing, all of that good stuff, man, at the cornerback position. But you know the thing that saves his ass every time, and I love it, and this is what I always encourage cornerbacks to do, you can get away with a little bit of pulling and hugging and loving and tugging. You can get away with a lot of that if you look back for the football. The officials will ignore a lot of things that have taken place throughout the first 7 to 15 yards if you just look back. It's almost like an eraser. It erases the memory of an official when he sees you look back for the football. If you don't, it's an easy license for him to reach in his hip, pull out the yellow hanky, and throw it and flag you for PI, or flag you for holding, or flag you for illegal contact. But if you turn around and you identify where the football is coming from, they're willing to give you a pass. Now, sometimes, if it's egregious, they got to flag your ass. I mean, let's be honest, okay? But how many years did we watch Darrelle Revis get away with absolute assault and battery at the cornerback position? You as Buccaneers fans should know about it. You saw him for a couple of years out there. He was molesting guys out there. We've watched Dick Sherman get away for years with absolutely assaulting receivers. But why did they get away with it? Because they always looked back for the football. You make a name for yourself in this league by picking off passes and being a playmaker. Once you establish yourself, you can get away with murder if you look back. How do you establish yourself? Look back for the ball. MJ Stewart is constantly looking back for the football. I absolutely love it. Okay? The fact that this guy will mug a guy for 7 yards and then look back like, I didn't do nothing, and go make a play on the football, how can you not love it? How can you not love it? Ball skills. Good ball skills. Talked about the 6 INTs, but his size limits some of his opportunities. I watched him in the bowl game versus Stanford in 2016, and he should have had an interception in the end zone. I don't know how he does not come down with this interception. It somehow comes out of his hands upon impact with the ground and ends up in the belly of the receiver in the end zone. How, I don't know, but I know he was kicking himself after that one, obviously. And in that same game, there was another play where he was in great position on an outbreaking route to the sidelines. And here's what he did. He tried to molest the receiver at the line of scrimmage. He was in the slot, and the receiver was running a corner route. But he knew he had help over the top, so he was over-aggressive at the line of scrimmage. He got beat off the jam. This receiver, Asiga Whiteside, got to be like 6'4", might even be a tight end, 6'4", 240 pounds or something like that. He's a big kid. Anyway, he beats him off the line of scrimmage, off the jam, but he knows he's got help over the top. Smart football player. So I can be over-aggressive, and I can play underneath this route because I've got help over the top. So what does he do? He sags underneath the route, turns and locates, and oh, look what we have here. Football coming my way. Look at my chops. Here we go. He goes to go up for the football, and the 6'4" receiver says, no, you don't, man. Get your little ass down. Snatches the football from him and catches it and gets a foot in bounds. So his size at times can be at a disadvantage, and, you know, we got big receivers. You got one in your division. Julio! You got another one that's emerging in Michael Thomas. All of a sudden now some big receivers making plays in your division. This guy may not be able to handle those guys in jump ball situations. So we'll see how that goes. But nonetheless, I love what MJ Stewart brings to the table. I think he can also be an active blitzer. Talked about the 3 sacks, seen him get to the quarterback on an occasion as a blitzer off the edge, and he can play in both the slot and out wide. Anxious to see what the Buccaneers have in store for him. I think if I'm the Buccaneers, I want to try this guy out wide first. I wouldn't be opposed to kicking Vernon Hargreaves inside to the nickel and letting this guy play out wide because he's a little bit more physical, and he will give you an opportunity to allow the pass rush to hit home because he will disrupt the timing of a route because of how aggressive he is at the line of scrimmage. So I wouldn't mind seeing this guy get an opportunity outside, and if it doesn't work, you kick him inside to the slot where he's got experience there as well. But like I told you, he gives you that versatility of a slot, a boundary, kickoff return guy. Had a couple of kick returns in his career, but more prolifically, he was a punt returner at North Carolina. So really love what this guy brings to the table. And again, the thing that I love the most, there's a level of physicality and toughness that he brings to the table that the Buccaneers have lacked in their secondary from their corners for quite some time, dating back to the days of the early 2000s where the Bucs were just dominant in the secondary and very physical with Lynch and Barber and Abraham and company. So this guy is going to be physical, and that's what the Bucs, I think, are trying to do with this draft and with the guys that they've brought in via free agency. In the second round, 53rd overall selection, cornerback out of UNC. MJ Stewart, for me, is... So we go to the third second-round pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this draft. This time, 63rd overall selection, cornerback out of, or let me say defensive back out of Auburn. Carleton Davis is the selection. And for those of you scoring at home, MJ Stewart was a triple. Carleton Davis is a guy that I've already broken down on the draft Prospects 101 series. So again, if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Carleton Davis, that's where you need to be. But as I mentioned, when you guys drafted him, as I mentioned on the breakdown for Carleton Davis, I'm not gonna wow you with speed. As a matter of fact, when this guy gets beat off the line of scrimmage, he can be beaten bad off the line of scrimmage, and big plays can and will be given up because of his aggressiveness at the line of scrimmage. But again, I think the Buccaneers are looking for aggressive, physical corners, physical football players in general. And with these two picks back to back, what they're saying to me is we need to overhaul the cornerback position. We can't count on Brent Grimes. At some point, Brent Grimes is going to fall off, all right? He's going to fall off the table because he's up there in age, and we know he's contemplating retirement. He thought about it last year. So, you know, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. We don't know what we're going to get out of Vernon Hargreaves. We're not giving up on him, but we need to make sure that we continue to progress so that in case he doesn't pan out, we've got other guys that we're trying to see if they can get the job done. So, and you're adding an element of physicality here in Davis and Stewart that I think this secondary, as I mentioned, has lacked. You add that to the fact that you added a safety last year in the draft in Evans that's a physical football player. And now you look at the way that that secondary is constructed with all these physical football players. You look at what you did up front now with JPP, adding Vita Vea, Mitch Unrein, Bo Allen. You're going to get Noah Spence back. All of a sudden now he's put on weight too. So all of a sudden now the defensive line looks vastly different. Obviously Gerald McCoy and all of the other guys, William Golston, all these other guys that can help you up front that are big physical football players. It's all starting to come together for you in a physical way, and Carleton Davis is going to continue that trend as another physical, long press corner. Unlike MJ Stewart, who's a little bit on the smaller side, same can be said with Vernon Hargreaves III and Brent Grimes, Carleton Davis is much bigger at 6'1", much longer, and a lot more physical than the guys that you already have on the football team. He's a pure press cover corner, a guy that wants to get in your face, delete the airspace, and be physical at the line of scrimmage. And again, I think that's in line with what the Bucs are looking to do in this offseason. In the second round, 63rd overall selection, corner out of Auburn, Carleton Davis, for me, is... So for those of you scoring at home, Carleton Davis was a triple. As we go to the third round, 94th overall selection, offensive lineman out of Humboldt State. Wow, Humboldt State. Alex Kappa is the selection. So this is another one of these selections that you look at and you say, bringing a tough guy in here that's going to be a man mover, that's going to be physical at the point of attack, that's coming from a small school. Does this sound familiar to you? Because the Buccaneers did this exact same thing last year, going to a small school offensive interior lineman in Ali Marpet out of Hobart College. And so you're doing it again with a physical guy from a small school that was just throwing guys out of the bar left and right. And at one point, it crossed my mind to just turn the tape off. I didn't want to watch it anymore. It looked like a college player playing against middle school students. It wasn't fair. The first game I watched him play in was against Simon Fraser in 2016. And it looked like it looked like a big bully picking on a little kid. And I was like, man, this is garbage. I don't want to watch this because it was too much. The very first play, he takes the guy and throws him on the ground and then plops on top of him. The second play, he takes the guy and throws him on the ground again. And I'm like, really, guy? Like, what is this? What are we doing here? Have some balls. If you're the guy, you gotta stop this guy from throwing you down on the ground, right? So eventually it stopped, but there was more of that to come throughout the course of the tapes that I watched, and it's just like, really? So it's hard to identify if that will translate or not. Like, is he really that strong? Like, no way. He's not tossing around NFL players like that. Hell, he wouldn't have been tossing around guys hell, I'd say in the FCS, because he played at Division II Humboldt State. If he was in the FCS, I don't think he would have been throwing guys around. Definitely not throwing them around like that in the FBS. So that's also something you have to take into consideration. But again, another one of these guys you draft in the interior of an offensive line that's being revamped with Ryan Jensen coming on board, Ali Marpet last year, and now here Alex Kappa looking to be more physical. Have we heard that theme already tonight? More physical in the trenches. 6'6", 305 pounds out of Humboldt State. 33-inch arms, 5'3", 940, 24 reps of 2 1/4. Came to Humboldt State only with 1 year of offensive line experience. So what he did was he sat down and redshirted for a year and then proceeded to play all 43 games the remainder of his career. Did not miss a single start for the rest of his career. The next 4 years, he played in every game. So you know you're getting a very durable offensive lineman. As I mentioned, Division II football player. So you got to take what you see with this guy with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, you know my one prerequisite for getting drafted from a small school: dominate the competition. And that Alex Kappa did. Measurables, like I told you, 6'6", 305. You'd like to see him put on a little bit more weight, and I assume he will. He's got a frame that can carry more weight, so I assume that he's going to put on more weight. Athleticism, not his strongest suit. He's one of those guys that, not the fastest in the world, not the quickest guy, but when he gets there, he does damage. Technique, grabs at the point of contact when pass blocking. A lot of times when he would throw guys on the ground, it would be him literally grabbing them at the shoulder pads and then flipping them and tossing them down. That's something that I'd like to see him correct. Less grabbing, more kind of pushing guys and keeping them at bay. We'll see what happens at the next level, because when you grab a guy like that, you can easily be misconstrued, because those weren't holds. When you hear the term grabbing, first thing you think of is holding. Those weren't holds. That was him ragdolling a guy, shaking him and throwing him on the ground. But at the next level, if you do that and the guy is smart enough and savvy enough to grab your jersey as he's going down and pull you down with him, officials are dummies. They will throw the flag. They won't see the whole thing. They'll just see a guy going down and you having a tug of the jersey, and they'll just assume, oh, that's holding, and they'll throw the flag. And you'll have a 55-yard touchdown run come back because of some nonsense that wasn't really holding. So I'd like to see him clean that up. Anchor, I didn't see, but again, take it with a grain of salt. I didn't see him anchored. I didn't see him push back in his anchor challenged, not a single time, while at Humboldt State. And again, a lot of that has to do with level of competition. Balance. For a guy that was really, really physical in the run game and didn't have a lot of reason to be on the ground other than pancaking somebody or cut blocking someone, he was on the ground a bunch. He fell down a lot, and without contact too. Like, he'd be running to the second level and he'd just fall down, and I'm like, that's interesting. So I'd like to see him have better balance. And right now, I don't think his balance is all that great. Really tough, as I said. Didn't miss a start in his career. Very physical, so the toughness isn't something that I question with Alex Kappa. Pass blocking and run blocking are both good. I think his run blocking is a little bit better than his pass blocking at this very moment. He's a guy that does finish. I told you he's throwing guys out of the bar left and right. So he's very nasty and physical, which is what you're looking for in the trenches. Awareness. There were a couple of times where I watched him and I said, is this guy FGing? He's FGing. What are you doing, guy? And I can't stand when offensive linemen FG. What does FG mean? It means you're Forrest Gumping. And what does Forrest Gumping mean for an offensive lineman? It means you're just running. You're just running. Like, no purpose. You know, you remember when Forrest was running and they asked him, well, how long are you going to run? What are you running for? And he's just like, I don't know, I'm just running till I get tired. And people just started joining Forrest and he was just running. And then he just stopped. I had all these people following him. And he's like, all right, I'm tired. I'm done. Alex Kappa is one of these offensive linemen who just Forrest Gumps sometimes. Like, his job should be to double team and come off the double team and get to the second level. And he'll just go straight to the second level and there won't be anyone in the general vicinity for him to block. And he'll just keep going and going. And there was one time, there was one play down by the end zone. Let's just say they're at the 9-yard line. And it's a run play. And his job was to get to the second level and get to a second level defender. And there wasn't anyone that was like an MDM on the play, most dangerous man. So he just kept running. And he ran. And for a minute, I looked back to the running back because I thought it was a pass. And I'm like, was this guy an eligible receiver? Is he going out for a pass? Because he's wide open. He's the only guy in the end zone. He's 3-4 yards into the end zone with not a single defender within 5 yards of him. And he's just running. And I'm like, hey, bro. And I look back in the running backs. He's trying to find space to run. And never once was it a pass. I'm like, what the hell are you doing, man? And so he's getting his Forrest Gump on, just running. And I'm like, bruh, go block somebody. What the hell are you doing? And I watched him do that twice on tape. Once is enough for me. He did it again now. The other one wasn't as egregious where he was just in the end zone chilling, but he's just running and running and running, runs past everybody, doesn't touch a soul. And I'm like, interesting. So I had a couple of interesting moments with Alex Kappa, to say the least. But in any event, his spatial awareness, I just told you, it's not as good as I would like it to be. You know, when you're out in space, you need to find somebody to block. And he doesn't always do that to the best of his abilities. Double teams, he's excellent on the double team. Like I said, he gets to the second level with ease. But does he always block somebody when he gets there? Not always. But in any event, he's a solid puller. And like I told you, the guy didn't miss a career start, so his availability is his best ability at this current moment. But I like what Alex Kappa brings to the table. I'm anxious to see if he's going to be tossing guys out of the bar. I highly doubt it, okay? He's not going to be just tossing and pitching guys on the ground like a fork into the trash after you're done with it. I can't see him doing that. But what he does do is help further that mindset of we're bringing in tough football players. And I can tell you this, Alex Kappa is tough. And he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder because he comes from Humboldt State. And no one's giving him respect. And no one knows who he is. And so he's looking to make a name for himself. He's a tough guy. He's physical. And he's looking to bring that attitude to this Buccaneers offensive line. And so in the third round, 94th overall selection, offensive lineman out of Humboldt State, Alex Kappa for me is. And Alex Kappa was a double as we move to the fourth round, 117th overall selection. Defensive back out of Pitt, Jordan Whitehead is the selection. So again, right in line with what I've mentioned already about being a much more physical football team, Jordan Whitehead is a physical football player. He plays the game with a level of recklessness that makes me smile. And at the safety position, there's something to be said about being under control at times, but then there are other times where I just want you balls to the wall, and I want you going hard, and I want you to be a guy that's looking to inflict pain on another man that's trying to gain yardage and catch the football and things of that nature. And that's what the safety position has been over the years. They're trying to legislate some of that out of the game, but when you strip football to its core, as a safety, your job is last line of defense, whether that's in the pass game or the run game. Make sure that guys don't get behind you and you make, whether it's a saving tackle or a knockaway on the pass, you just try to keep everything in front of you. That's your primary duty. Number 2 is strike fear into the opposition. Somebody comes over the middle, you hit them. You know, a ball carrier thinks they've got a hole, you come and fill it with force. And Jordan Whitehead does that. And you look at his frame, and he's not supposed to be able to do some of the things that he does with the ferocity that he does it with, which can explain some of the injuries that he's had throughout his career. But I love it. I want more of it. At 5'10", $198, you don't expect the physical football player that you're getting, but know that you're getting a guy that plays with a physical, reckless abandon. NFL bloodlines, his cousin is Darrelle Revis. So, hey, who knew? 4.5 flat in terms of his 40, so you're getting a good athlete here at the safety position. 24 reps of 2 1/4, so a physical guy at the safety position. Played in 31 games, started 30 of them. Did miss quite a few games in his career, however. Some due to suspension, others due to injury. Speaking of which, a broken arm caused him to miss the final 3 games of the 2015 season. And with that extra time off, he ended up violating some team rules and missed the first 3 games of the 2016 season because of his violation of team rules. So the broken arm, I can see how he could break his arm. He plays the game hard, physically, and it's going to lead to some injuries when you've got a frame that's 5'10", $198. So in any event, career stats, 3 INTs, 1 of which went to the crib. I got to see that versus Virginia. 12 PBUs in his career, 2 forced fumbles, 7 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, a half a sack. And he also was featured on the offensive side of the football. This guy was a major recruit as a 2-way player coming out of high school, big-time safety, cornerback, and a big-time running back out of high school. Pitt decided to play him at safety, but they also gave him some opportunities to touch the rock on the offensive side of the football as a running back, mostly on jet sweeps and things of that nature, but 43 career rushes for 362 yards and 3 touchdowns throughout the course of his career. So he was a guy that went both ways and had success in doing so. Measurables, obviously at 5'10", $198, not the greatest measurables in the world for a guy playing the safety position, but again, he plays the game like he's 218 pounds, not 198 pounds. Speed, he's got good athleticism and speed. He's a tremendous athlete. When you watch him move on the football field, you could see why he was able to go both ways. Pause. Acceleration is solid. It's not the greatest in the world, but when you see him come downhill as a tackler, you get to see the acceleration on full display. Anticipation and awareness. I like my Jordan Whitehead in zone coverage better than I do in man situations. I love him keying the eyes of the quarterback and seeing what's happening in front of him and him reacting accordingly. When he sees it and goes, he's fun to watch. In the pick 6 versus UVA, he's playing zone coverage over the middle of the football field, reacts to a in-breaking route, jumps it, picks it off, and then turns into a punt returner. Again, this guy was a big-time running back in high school, and so you get to see a little bit of that with the football in his hands. And he reminds me so much of Sean Taylor in the sense of Sean Taylor was one of the few athletes that you would see on the football field pick up a fumble while it was moving, while it was on the ground, whatever the case may be. This guy will run full speed at a football that's bouncing around and without breaking stride. Most guys got to slow down, got to brace themselves to pick up a fumbled football. Jordan Whitehead is running maximum speed, and he's scooping up fumbles. Had a fumble that he scored on in his freshman year on a scoop and score fumble recovery where he just hauls ass to the football, scoops it, and is able to get across the goal line. Another fumble that's bouncing all over the place, and without hesitation, running full speed, he runs, scoops up the fumble, and is going the opposite way with it. And so this is a guy that's where you see the athleticism, and he is one of those arrogant athletes, which you got to have. He's a guy that believes in his athleticism, believes in his physicality, believes in himself as a football player, and you need confidence first and foremost. Before anything else, you need to be confident in your abilities, and Jordan Whitehead is definitely confident in his abilities. Tackling and willingness to tackle, I put physical defender who throws his body around. I was watching film with my girl, and she was like, man, he's just throwing his body around. And I was like, yeah. And she didn't like it because he wasn't wrapping up at certain points. But I'm like, but then she liked some tackles, and I'm like, well, you can't like that tackle and not like the other one. You got to take the good with the bad. You want him to wrap up in certain situations, and he does sometimes wrap up, but for the most part, he's looking to throw his body around and be physical in that regard, and he's going to have some guys bounce off of him. And you're going to get mad at him for missing some tackles, but you're also going to be like, ooh, that was a kill shot. That was nasty. And so he's going to throw his body around. That is for certain. Zone coverage, I put down in my notes, think he is an ideal zone safety. And so I really like him in zone coverage more so than I do in man situations. Field coverage and range. The best example of his field coverage and the range that he possesses as a zone covering safety is against Duke. He's playing basically two-man. They're playing two-man, and they're right by the end zone, and the Duke receiver runs a beautiful fade, sets up the cornerback, Avonte Maddox, who was also drafted in the 2018 NFL draft, if I'm not mistaken, by the Philadelphia Eagles. And he sets him up, gives him a nice stutter at the line of scrimmage, gives him a stem to the inside, breaks to the outside, and he's got him. This is going to be a touchdown. It's a beautifully thrown football. It's on time. It's to the back pylon. This is going to be 7. And here comes Jordan Whitehead out of nowhere to dislodge man from football. If he doesn't get there when he gets there, it's a touchdown. Instead, he separates man from football, incomplete pass, and that's what I'm talking about, him being a zone defender. I much more so prefer him in zone situations than in man. But that's the kind of range that he has right there, being able to get there on a football that's thrown to the back corner of the end zone and making a play. So gives you a little bit of versatility as a guy that can come down, kind of one of these rock and roll modern safeties that can play some free, even though I wouldn't advise him being a single high safety, can still play a little bit of free, but also come down in the box and be an enforcer as a strong safety. So lot to like here, you know, and with Justin Evans last year, adding a guy like Jordan Whitehead, again, you're getting more physicality. You add MJ Stewart, you add Carleton Davis, you're getting more physical in that secondary in Tampa in the 4th round, 117th overall selection, defensive back out of Pitt. Jordan Whitehead for me is so for those of you scoring at home, Jordan Whitehead was a double as we move to the 5th round, 144th overall selection. Wide receiver out of Penn, Justin Watson. Watson is the pick. So y'all give it up for Mr. Justin Watson. And this is a guy that, I'm not going to lie to you, had a lot of fun watching this guy perform. You know, when you look at guys that play at smaller schools or in the Ivy League, as the case with Justin Watson, you know the level of competition isn't going to be the stiffest, but you still want to see a guy dominate. And not all, you know, guys that are drafted out of smaller schools dominate equally. You know, a guy like Daurice Fountain, who was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts out of northern Iowa, he didn't really dominate to me. I didn't see a guy that lit it up. I think they're more so going off of projection with him. He's got good size, he's got good speed, and they project him to get better, and they think he'll be a good pro. But he didn't dominate. Justin Watson dominated the Ivy League, okay? And, you know, I'm a receiver guy, so I've got a soft spot for not only the receiver position, but I've got an even softer spot for the fast white receiver. You know, there are certain positions that white guys just don't excel at. You know, receiver not necessarily one of them. We've got quite a few white receivers that ball. So receiver isn't necessarily one of them, but Obviously, we know there aren't many white corners. When's the last time we seen one of those? I keep harking on that. What's the last one we saw of those? Jason Sehorn, may I say? Dare I say Jason Sehorn? I might have missed one somewhere in the last 20 years, but Jason Sehorn is the last one that comes to my mind. Good one, at least. Running back is another one of those positions. And when I say running back, I mean like actual running back, not Danny Woodhead running back. I'm talking about a guy that you can turn around and hand it to, 20 times in any given game. That's why I was really, really excited for Christian McCaffrey, because we don't get many of those guys. Same thing for the receiver position to an extent. And Justin Watson at 6'3", 215, you hear that? And the first thing you're thinking of is like one of those Ed McCaffrey type dudes. Not the fastest guy in the world, but he's going to be a physical possession receiver, make some plays. That's why we all love Jordy. Who doesn't love Jordy Nelson? Air Jordy. Because Jordy was smoking dudes. And that's the problem. You see a white dude, 6'2", you're thinking, okay, he's probably slow. And then when he smokes your ass, you're like, shit, that white dude can run. And so Justin Watson is one of these dudes. I think people are going to underestimate him because they're going to look at him, 6'3" white dude, he's got to be a possession receiver. And they're gonna sleep on him, and they're going to be sitting down on his routes, and he's going to smoke somebody. He's going to burn somebody's ass, toast some buns, and all of a sudden dudes is going to start to respect this man's ability to run, because I'm going to tell you right now, the man made the comment. He said, look, I'm going to tell you right now, I went to the Senior Bowl. Not that much difference in level of competition from the boys I was dusting in the Ivy League and these cats here. I beg to differ, Justin. I really do. Okay, there's a big difference between your Cornell corner, okay, your Yale cornerback, all right, and your cornerback that's at Alabama, or your cornerback that's at Georgia, or your cornerback that's at SC. So I beg to differ, but I can tell you one thing. He still held his own at the Senior Bowl. So I'm excited about a 6'3", 215-pound wide receiver that runs a 4.42 with 20 reps of 2 1/4 and a 40-inch vert. I'm excited about that. I want to see this young man. So he left Penn as one of the most decorated receivers, not just in school history, in the Ivy League conference's history. He tore it up, set all kinds of records, holds just about every record imaginable at Penn, and just as many records in the conference. So he lit it up. Career stats, 286 career catches for 3,777 yards. Yikes. 33 touchdowns, 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons to finish up his career, and 4,116 all-purpose yards, because I watched 2 games, one against Cornell, one against Princeton. They get him the football in all kinds of ways. They line him up in the backfield, jet sweeps. They line him up in the backfield. They'll hand it to him. They will throw it to him out of the backfield. They'll send him in motion. He'll be out wide as a receiver, motion into the backfield. They'll throw him a slip screen, get blockers out in front. They created ways to get Justin Watson the football. And oh, by the way, he's a damn good receiver, and he was beating guys on the outside as well. And he kick inside and run routes from the slot too. So you name it, he did it at Penn. And it was just fun to watch him. It was fun to watch him. I'm not going to necessarily give you a pro by pro, con by con breakdown, because he played in the Ivy League and he tore it up. I can tell you this much. His hands are A1. And the thing I love is that when you're the best player on your team, the other team knows you're the best player on the team. They know that. There's a scouting report out on you. So they know going into the game, we've got to stop Justin Watson. We can't let him, and you can't tell me that Justin Watson isn't a black name. Like, if I told you that, man, there's a 6'3", 215-pound receiver named Justin Watson, what's the first thing you're thinking? Oh, yeah, that's a brother. Justin Watson runs like a brother, goes and gets the football like a brother, breaks dudes off like a brother. But I'm going to tell you right now, when the game was on the line, this is the thing I love. The other team knows you're getting the rock. They know you are the guy, and they still couldn't stop him. Now, some of that is, yeah, it's Yale. It's Princeton. It's Cornell, okay? It's Radford. I get it. I understand. all of that. I understand the dynamic there. But I watched him in the Princeton game, and they were trailing in that game, down 7. And, or they were down 5 late in that ball game. And they had to have it. And I watched this guy go down, catch a touchdown late in the ball game with about 1:11 left to give them the lead that they will ultimately hold on to. Princeton missed a field goal late that would have given them a tie to send it to overtime. But they knew he was getting the ball. Some crucial situations late in that ball game. He had 2 touchdowns in that game. And he just ran right by the cornerback. Broke him off, ran right by him. Touchdown. Back of the end zone. I watched him against Cornell. Now, this game, they were down 7. They took it all the way down the field. They put together a 94-yard drive. And the play that set up the touchdown was a Justin Watson diving stab. About a 42-yard gain. It's a beautiful catch. And again, game's on the line here, folks. And he goes and gets it, dives and corrals the football down to about the 2 or 3 yard line. They end up getting it in a couple plays later. It's big time football, man. When the game's on the line, this guy stepped up, made plays for his team. There were some crucial, critical third down situations on that drive. And that was a lengthy drive, about 11, 12 plays, 94 yards. He was the guy that they went to in those crucial situations. 3rd and 3, Justin Watson. 3rd and 7, Justin Watson. Who else could it be? And they knew it was coming, and they still couldn't stop it. That's the sign of a guy that's a baller. And I think Justin Watson can be a baller, man. I'm not going to sell this guy short as just another 5th-round pick or a white receiver. No, the guy is a baller. I'm rooting for him, man, because I watched a dude that I look at and I say, this guy can play on Sundays, and he can be Jordy Nelson. I think the comp, though, is Adam Thielen. When you look at him, similar build as Adam Thielen, really good route runner like Thielen is, and deceptively quick and fast. Adam Thielen, dudes, they respect Thielen now. They didn't respect him when he first came in the league. Dudes is respecting Adam Thielen's ass now, though. And this is my last question. Why do we always got to compare white players to other white players? Like, why couldn't we compare him to, say, trying to think of a black guy, a black receiver that's like 6'2", somewhere in there that has the movement skills of a Justin Watson with the same type of frame. Like, why couldn't we compare him to, say, Juju Smith-Schuster? Same size at 6'3", Schuster is 6'2", Schuster 6'2", 215. This guy 6'3", 215. Why we couldn't compare him to Juju? We got to compare him to Adam Thielen. That's just what we do, right? We're so racist. In any event, in the 5th round, 144th overall selection, wide receiver out of Penn, Justin Watson, for me, is. Justin Watson, for me, is a double as we wrap up this Buccaneers draft. And he easily could have been a triple. I think I shortchanged him because he played in the Ivy League. And I'm like, you're not going to do that at the next level, are you? So it's just one of those wait-and-see situations. Had he played against just slightly better competition, I probably would have given him a triple because I was that impressed with the guy. But nonetheless, 6th round, 202nd overall selection, linebacker out of Wisconsin, Jake Sitchie is the selection. So this is an intriguing pick to wrap up this Buccaneers draft. I talked about them getting tougher and more physical. This is exactly what Jake Sitchie is. 6'2", 238 pounds, 18 reps of 2 1/4, 33-inch vert. Did not run a 40 before the draft because he was coming off of a torn ACL, but he's pretty much back to where he needs to be able to help contribute in 2018. So this guy here, I put in my notes, Jake Sitchie has not played in a game since October 22nd, 2016. All right, in which and that was a game in which he tore his pec muscle versus Iowa, which I got to watch on tape. And it was sad watching him in that game because I watched the play in which he tore his pec muscle. He falls down on the sidelines as he's trying to make a tackle on Akrum Wadley. And he goes down and he falls on his shoulder and he tears his pec muscle. You can see him writhing in pain. He comes back in the game and they give him one of those shoulder contraptions that, you know, is supposed to help you in a situation where you've got an issue to your shoulder or, in this case, a pec muscle. But he couldn't move the arm well. He couldn't wrap. He couldn't do anything. And so he blitzes right up the A-gap, has a clear shot at C.J. Beathard, the Iowa quarterback, and he simply doesn't wrap him up. Why does he not wrap him up? He can't wrap him up. One of his arms isn't functional. He's playing with a torn pec. Obviously, they didn't know it was torn at the time, but and you hear the announcers ripping him. Oh, Jake Sitchie has a clear-cut shot at C.J. Beathard, and he just simply doesn't wrap. He can't wrap up. He's got a torn pec. So, and it was hard watching him for the next quarter trying to gut it out. He's such a tough SOB, gutting it out with a torn pec before finally I'm saying to myself, there was another play where he's just throwing his body around. All he can do is throw his shoulder around. He can't wrap. And he misses another tackle. He half-asses another one. Then he makes 2 tackles by just throwing his shoulder in. And I'm saying, you got to get this guy out of here, man. He is leaving it all out on the field for his guys, but he can't help you. He can't wrap up. So they finally got him out of there. And he hasn't played a game since because the next offseason, as he's preparing for the year, tears his ACL. So you're talking about a guy that hasn't played in a game since October 22nd, 2016. You're talking about damn near a year and a half that this guy has not played in a football game. So the next time that he steps on a football field in an actual game that counts, that matters, because he's going to play in the preseason, obviously, if he makes his Buccaneers roster, would have almost been 2 full calendar years since the last time he's been on a football field. In any event, came to Wisconsin as a 185-pound walk-on. So the guy's mentally tough, and he's physically tough, as I just told you. So he built his body, and he's a self-made man, and he's going to come with that chip on his shoulder, and I like that. 6.5 career sacks, 15 tackles for loss, 6 PBUs, and 2 forced fumbles. They call him 3-sack Jack because he had a stretch in the 2015 bowl game versus USC, and I got a chance to watch that, where he, sacked their quarterback 3 straight plays. That's so rare. The hat trick. Sacked him on first down, sacked him on second down, sacked him on third down. So they call him 3-sack Jack. 3-sack Jack is what they call him. But nonetheless, measurables, solid measurables at 6'2", 238. That's right in line with what you see from today's NFL linebacker, as I mention all the time. We don't have a speed for this guy, but I've pegged him at somewhere in this neighborhood, probably closer to the latter than the former, but I've got him pegged somewhere in the 4.58 to 4.66 neighborhood. When you see him run down, and he may not actually be that fast, but when you see him go downhill, when he sees it and explodes into the backfield, you can't help but think that this guy's got some dynamic ability as a mover in the run game. This guy, as a blitzer, he puts his body on the line. He runs into a brick wall. I mean, he runs up that A-gap, and whether the center sees it or not, and it's picking him up, he's going to slam into somebody. And if you don't block him, he's coming screaming like a banshee out of hell after your quarterback. Good athleticism, acceleration, redirect, and awareness. All of these things are really solid. He was a good core piece of that Wisconsin linebacking core. And if you remember, at one point it was Vince Beagle, it was Jake Sitchie, and it was T.J. Watt all at the same time. So they had a hell of a group of linebackers at Wisconsin at one point. And they were playing some ball, and Sitchie was one of the better of that group. Takes on blocks very well. Really good tackler out in space, wraps guys up, gets in the backfield, and doesn't miss very often. Solid in zone coverage as a zone dropper, but no career INT, so that tells you that he's not around the ball enough to make plays in that capacity, but he did get good depth on his drops as a zone defender. Blitzing capabilities, I talked about the 3 straight sacks versus USC. He only had 6.5 in his career, but 3 of them came in that ball game. And so he's a guy that I think if you give him an opportunity to make plays, he's going to make plays. I was really impressed with him in that regard. Really good range. Like I said, watched him track down J.T. Barrett a couple of times. Watched him run with Akrum Wadley a couple of times. Watched him do some things in some games and be an impact player on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, sideline to sideline. So I really like what Jake Sitchie brings to the table. The question is, how healthy is he? And where is he at from a mental standpoint? When you have 2 consecutive injuries the way that he has, are you the same player when you come back? We're going to see. But I like Jake Sitchie, and I think if this guy were to be healthy and have played, you wouldn't have been getting him here in the 6th round. This is a value pick potentially. We'll see what it amounts to, but in the 6th round, 202nd overall selection, linebacker out of Wisconsin, Jake Sitchie for me to wrap up this Buccaneers draft is... So that's this Bucs draft in a nutshell. I really felt like Jason Light and company were trying to get physical on both sides of the football. Bigger, stronger, faster was the name of the game in this particular draft. And in this offseason, I think it was a continuation of this offseason where they got bigger, stronger, much more physical on both sides of the football. And I think this draft kind of represents that as well. I don't think it was no more a bigger example of it than the first 4 picks in this draft for the Buccaneers. You know, you look at the drafting of Vita Vea, not Ronald Jones so much, but you go to the next pick and really the next 3 picks. So you could say the first 5 picks, honestly, because then you go and you take MJ Stewart, a physical cornerback. Same could be said for Carleton Davis. And then after that, Alex Kappa. So physical football players. Your first 4 out of 5 picks, all physical football players in their own right at their respective positions. So really feel like that's the emphasis for the Buccaneers. And if you're looking for the scores for all of these players and what I graded them as, go to the website LouieTeeNetwork.net to see those scores. Make sure you're supporting the movement that is the Louie Tee Network by also checking out the podcast, Louie Tee Network Podcast, available on Stitcher, iTunes, also available on Google Music Play, and of course the website LouieTeeNetwork.net. If you want to support the movement by donating, there are so many ways that you can do that. All of the different links are down below in the description of this video, whether it's to the podcast, to the website, to Patreon, to PayPal, to whatever, to Amazon, as I also have some things there with Amazon, as I'm an Amazon affiliate. So if you can help, please do. I accept any and all donations. Really greatly appreciate it. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the Louie Tee Network if you haven't already done so on YouTube, as that is a great help. And I put in a lot of time and effort into these videos and this brand. That being said, this is what I think of this Buccaneers draft, as I actually thought it was a very sound and quality draft put together by Jason Light, and they need it in the worst way in Tampa. So that's going to do it for the Buccaneers draft. It was a really good haul. 8 players. I thought there were quality selections throughout from picks 1 all the way to number 8. And we're going to see how these guys develop, who makes the roster, who doesn't. It wouldn't shock me if all 8 of these guys made this Buccaneers roster. I got a feeling 1 or 2 of them probably will end up with, you know, the short end of the deal and have to go to the practice squad. But one thing's for certain. These all are talented football players, and most importantly, they're physical football players, and that's the direction I think the Buccaneers are looking to trend in 2018. I'm your man, Louie Tee, signing off. Thank you for joining me. Remember, we're changing the game one video at a time. Be on the lookout as these divisional breakdowns are coming your way sooner rather than later. I'm your man, Louie Tee. See you next time. Have a good one.
Louie Tee Network.